Hi, and welcome to Focal Point AFR Talk. I am Brian Fisher, your congenial, convivial, and amiable host. Great to have you with us in the conversation today. One of the issues that we talk about frequently is the impact of President Obama's policies on the economy, and we're going to talk about that more as the program develops. But a good friend of this program and a frequent guest is Peter Wierenga. Peter is a registered representative of Berthel Fisher and Company and sends out a weekly update that I get into my inbox. You can get it into your inbox as well. We'll have Peter tell you about that in just a moment. But his latest update, he had some commentary about what is going to happen to the American economy depending on what happens next Tuesday, November 6th. Peter, welcome back to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Thank you, Brian. Always good to be with you.
Well, Peter, you specialize in kind of keeping an eye on the economy, and that's kind of what we look to you for, Wall Street and the economy in general. And you have a couple of paragraphs in your weekly update in which you sort of make your best educated guess about what's going to happen to the American economy in the event that Barack Obama is reelected and in the event that Mitt Romney is elected on Tuesday. And this is obviously one of the data points that I think voters have got to be considering as they go to the polls on Tuesday. So share with us kind of how you see things lining up depending on which way the election goes on Tuesday.
Well, let me go back just a couple weeks, Brian, and tell you that for me there's really a moment of clarity a couple of weeks ago when Chairman Bernanke announced his quantitative easing infinity program, where I realized that this administration and the policies of this administration, as expressed through this particular Fed chairman, had really gotten us to a point that our course has been set fairly irrevocably, in my mind, for the next couple of years. But beyond that, we still have a choice as to which way we're going to go as a country. But for the next couple of years, because of the unbelievable amount of spending, the unbelievable amount of debt that we are going into, and the willingness to allow government interference into so many areas of our economy and thus cripple our economy as it has the last 3-4 years, because of what's happened for the next couple of years, there's not much we can do. But beyond that, if we basically, and I tried to lay this out last week and this week in my update, basically if we reelect this particular president, then what we are looking at would be certainly, I'd say almost certainly, dropping back into a recession. And I'd say there's even a fairly good chance of going beyond that, either into an extended recession, almost a European economy, sort of mediocre economy, where unemployment would stay consistently around 7 to 10%, where we'd see very little GDP growth, very little innovation, very few new businesses form. We could either become like Europe long term, or even worse, drop into a depression like we saw back in the 30s. I think it's instructive to look at what happened with Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who inherited a bad economy, a bad situation, and made it worse by insisting on seeing government as the answer and seeing government as the way to get us out of the economic troubles, rather than allowing for the private sector and businesses and a free enterprise sort of mentality to get us out of the economic malaise. So in my mind, there's a very clear choice. Even if Romney's elected, we're going to have at least a year or two of some pain, because you can't undo what has been done over the last 4 years overnight. Simply an election victory isn't going to change things overnight, but it will at least lay the groundwork if he follows through and does what he says he's going to do, and if he listens to his vice president, Paul Ryan, on several issues. There's the chance then that he will be able to begin to reverse some of those things, so that I think if that happens, then we could actually see, starting about a year and a half from now, 2 years from now, we could see some tremendous growth. As in, I wouldn't be surprised if we wouldn't see the stock market 50 to 70, 80% higher than it is now in 5 to 7 years because there's so much pent-up desire to grow and so much there's so much money on the sidelines and people that are waiting to do something that will do something with the right business environment, but will not do those things if this president is reelected.
One of the things that struck me, Peter, in reading through your update is sort of the extended time frame that you present. In other words, you suggest that if President Obama is reelected with the policies he'll put in place, that the impact of that is going to last well beyond his second term. I mean, you're projecting some pretty significant economic impact for 5 to 10 years, even a decade from now. Even if we were to replace President Obama in 2016 with a kind of pro-free enterprise, pro-capitalist president, the effect of what could happen in the next 4 years may last beyond even his first term. Whereas if the electorate chooses Governor Romney, in that same amount of time, we could see rapid growth in gross domestic product.
Absolutely. And again, I think it's instructive to look at what happened in the 30s with FDR. He came into a bad situation, made it worse, so that the Great Depression lasted for 10, 12 years, and we only got out of it because of the unbelievable exertion of energy, time, and money that went into fighting World War II. I do not want to have the situation where we have to have another worldwide global issue like that, or a war like that would pull our economy out of the doldrums. And so, if this president is reelected, I think that the debt that we would continue to go into, regardless of what he says, I heard him even again this morning talking about he's going to cut the deficit and cut the debt. He has given zero indication that he's serious about not spending money and about cutting the debt. So,
the interesting thing to me, Peter, about his rhetoric is that when he says, look, I'm going to cut the deficit, we're going to reduce spending, I mean, it's an indication that he understands and he knows that that's the right thing to do. He understands and he knows that that's what the American people know needs to be done. He understands and knows that that's what the American people want to hear. Somebody's going to get in control of this out-of-control spending. But he was saying that 4 years ago, and based on his performance over these 4 years, you have to question whether we can take him at all seriously when he says that.
Well, Brian, I agree with points 2 and 3. He knows that that's what the American people think should happen and what the American people want to hear. He does not believe that that is the right thing to do. He believes that there is no reason not to continue spending, that there is no reason to limit the borrowing. What he believes in his heart is that he has done nothing wrong in spending as much as he has and running up the debt as much as he has. He was, like you said, he was saying the same things 4 years ago, and over the last 4 years, he did what he believed in rather than what he said he was going to do. So for the next 4 years, especially if he's not burdened with having to get reelected, he will continue to do what he believes in, which is government intervention and spending, rather than what he's supposed to be doing.
Our guest has been Peter Wierenga. Peter is a registered representative of Berthel Fisher & Company Financial Services. And Peter, if people would like to get your weekly update delivered right to their inbox, how can they go about doing that?
Well, Brian, have them call my toll-free number, but they'll have to leave a message because I'm traveling right now. But have them call me at 855-220-0422. That's toll-free, 855-220-0422. Leave me a message to call them back, and I'll call back and get an email address.
All right, Peter, well, listen, thank you very much. I noticed you started your weekly update with a bummer about the Tigers getting swept. Not a word about my Giants taking care of the sweep here. What gives with that? I mean, it almost, Peter, I got to tell you, I mean, I was questioning whether I was even going to bring you on this week just to sort of get even.
Brian, I have to go all the way back to my childhood, the Denny McClain, Dick McCall of Tigers, rather than to my young adulthood with the Willie McCovey Giants. So sorry, I had to go all the way back to my childhood.
All right, Peter, listen, appreciate it. Very informative. Thanks again for taking time to be with us.
All right, Brian. We'll talk again soon. I hope.
Okay. God bless you, my friend. That's Peter Wierenga, Berthel Fisher and Company Financial Services, giving us his take on the economy. And again, according to Peter, who makes a career, I mean, this is what he does to study the impact of economic policies coming out of the administration on the American economy and American wallets. He says, look, if President Obama is reelected, we are looking at extended unemployment, 7 to 9% for the next 10 years. We're looking at more growth domestic product, less than 2% for the next 10 years. We're looking at the same kind of dynamic where Franklin Delano Roosevelt, as the economy began to pull out of the ditch in the 1930s, he instituted big government programs, and that slowed down the recovery, probably extended the depression for another 7 to 10 years. The alternative is to vote for Governor Romney, who at least has sent the signal that he believes in free enterprise, he believes in capitalism, he believes in reducing the tax burden on small businesses and reducing the regulatory burden. So that's part of the choice that the American people are going to be looking at on November 6th. I got a story here in front of me on the Blaze from a woman in Maryland who has kept track this year of every tax that she has paid. I mean, everything. And she lists the number of different taxes that you don't even think about, and she's been tracking them on a spreadsheet. She's made 1,800 entries on her spreadsheet just in 2012 alone. You've got gas taxes, you have state taxes, you have federal taxes, you have a special Maryland alcohol tax. This is where she lives. You have cell phone taxes, you have bay restoration fees, you have road tolls, you have mandatory union dues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, here are just the telephone fees. Here are the taxes. Now, remember, Obama's out there giving away these phones. We're buying these phones for these people to get for free with minutes that we're paying for. They don't have to pay for these phones. They don't have to pay the taxes on these phones. We do that. $10 for every one of those phones goes into the pocket of Carlos Slim, who is already the richest man in the world. We're paying to put $10 a phone into the pocket of the richest man in the world. Here are the taxes you pay on your phone. A Maryland 9/11 fee, federal excise tax, Maryland local tax, federal universal service fee, Maryland gross receipts tax surcharge, telecommunications access of Maryland fee, federal subscriber line charge, Maryland state sales tax, PEG grant free, regulatory recovery fee, federal video franchise fee, all on your phone bill. So she adds it up, $26,000. That represents 27% of their overall income. She says, look, I tithe 10% to my church. Government's taken 3 times out of my wallet what my own church has taken from me, what God has taken from me. Focal Point, AFR Talk.